I think you're 100% full of shit, is what I think. If you think
no offense, well, fuck you then.
Hold on.
This is Americanitis, episode 24 for June 13th, 2020. I'm your host, Daniel Sagner. This podcast contains harsh language and covers adult topics. You'll be challenged by views with which you do not agree. We may not be politically correct, but we are correct about politics. Something a little different today and next week, boys and girls. This week, I ran across a little bit of audio from the Chicago mayor and the aldermen thereof. The call's a little over an hour, and a lot of it is unlistenable due to glitches. I've done what I can to cut around and clean up the audio. I think this is an important view into the inner workings of the government in these cities during these times. Next week, I plan on reporting on the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, or CHAZ for short. This is a six-block area in Seattle that has been designated by its inhabitants as a cop-free zone and, astoundingly, not part of the United States, and this fascinates the hell out of me. I'm following it closely, and I don't want to give too much away. Unless we drop a nuke inside the country, I'll likely be covering the CHAZ. Also, I'd like to take a moment to thank everyone who shares this content with those who think differently. I hope I do a good job of making my arguments clear, and maybe we can change some minds. This is how we rescue the future. Those of you who haven't shared yet, please do. I'm looking to extend my reach as far as I can, and I don't get nearly enough hate mail. With the housekeeping out of the way, let's get onto the ground and listen to what happened during the first nights of the riots in Chicago. Full audio link in the show notes. It starts off with 5 minutes of the mayor listening silently in the background.
How do businesses recover, and why would they want to recover in our community?
Agreed.
You know,
Agreed.
And not only that, how do our seniors and vulnerable populations get their medication,
right?
get their food, if every CVS, Walgreens
It's shut down.
is shut down?
Look, and so listen to this. So even me, a person like me, I got a couple of prescriptions that I was supposed to pick up. I can't get them now. I'm going to have hell trying to go to another Walgreens in the south suburbs to try to get them.
Even me, a person like me, she says. You mean a person with pull. It's almost amusing to see government officials forced into the realization that businesses provide essential needs for citizens far better than the government, but I'm sure that's not what they'll take away from this. They'll probably try to nationalize pharmacies or some shit. Yes, why would those businesses come back? Don't let anybody tell you that this is only about money. You see, capitalism requires the removal of force from the market. It is a system of mutual trade to mutual benefit and cannot abide the use of force. But the police aren't doing their damn jobs because they are told to stand down. And what happens here? As you can hear in this clip, the most vulnerable are the first to suffer. I'm talking children, the very young, elderly, the sick, the disabled. They are among the most acutely harmed when businesses are driven away. They can't get their medicine, they can't get to emergency services, as we'll find out later.
They tore down, we watched them run into Nike, they stopped on Cottage Road.
On 80, on Cottage Road.
Cottage,
Yeah.
right in front of my office. Then they went to GameStop, tore that place up. It's like, you know, it's like, what are we going to have left in our community?
Nothing.
And you want to know something? I've worked really hard over the last 7 years.
Yeah.
And now I feel like I'm 5 feet back. Five steps back.
I'm ground zero. That's how I feel about it. My major business district is just shattered. You lose the two biggest icons. Why will Walmart or CVS come back to our communities?
And right in my area right now, 47th Street and Alderman Taylor, you know as well, Ashland 47th Street, it's just like a war zone right now because now with the police going back and forth from Halstead to Kedzie, the gang members are now getting involved, walking around with their AK-47s and threatening to shoot, I hate to say it, any black person because all they keep hearing is black people are the ones inciting. So now they're threatening everybody who comes in the neighborhood. It's ridiculous.
Ridiculous indeed. This kind of description almost makes me want to have the military deployed. Almost. Armed vigilantes, gang warfare, complete lawlessness. I'm not certain the police can handle this kind of unrest competently. Just so you know, all of these clips are in chronological order. I cut down the next 3, and we'll play them back to back.
The media on a Zoom.
My office, no! Oh my God!
What?
Did they
They're
break
in
it?
my office.
What is?
They broke into your office?
It is like a wild, wild west out there.
Alderman Harris, are you good?
Do you? She said the looters are in your office, and she was trying to say they're across the street from your office. But she texted me that, so I was like, they're in my office.
Ha ha, isn't that so funny? Confusion and panic is what these people are currently living through. I don't take that lightly either. Nobody should have to feel this way. The cops should be doing their jobs. But next we hear from the mayor. She chimes in, says that she's been waiting for 5 minutes trying to get a word in edgewise. And I see no reason to disbelieve her, but let's listen to her diatribe in full now.
So let me address a couple things up front. I've heard from my team that there is conversation among some that somehow I have turned my back on the neighborhoods, south and west side, in deference to protecting the central business district. And I just have to tell you that offends me deeply personally, in part because it's just simply not so. We've been working our ass off, the police department and the fire department, all day long, along with the call takers and dispatchers, all day long, to literally put out fires, follow up. The challenge is this is happening everywhere. As soon as the police are able to secure a location, and you can't just clean it out and then leave, you know that. If you do that, they're coming back again and they're setting it on fire. But the number of places all over the south and the west side in particular that have been hit today, it's just been off the charts. Literally hundreds, if not thousands, of locations. Big stores, small stores, strip mall, mini corner places. It is all over the city. And they have been fighting. But for example, I shared this with some of the West Side aldermen. At Pulaski and Madison, it took us 3 hours to clear a spot. These people were gassed with pepper spray twice, didn't give a shit. We're literally in armed combat with the police. And we finally had to bring in heavy equipment, stronger pepper spray, and finally, after 3 hours, we're able to clear the spot and hold it. That's what we faced, exactly the same thing last night downtown, and we're facing this all over the city. I saw down at 111th in Michigan earlier today, a huge crowd gathered outside a clothing store. Had to be 30, 40 people. Dude with a sledgehammer, trying to break through the metal barricade, break the lot so that people could loot. Now, I don't know about you, but I haven't seen shit like this before, not in Chicago. I wasn't here in 68 when the West Side went up. I've been on calls and text messages all day with people who fought hard to bring economic development to areas of the city, only to see like the Walgreens, the CVS, the grocery store, everything vanished in an eye blink. And I heard some of the comments, how hard you all have fought to bring economic development. And it's going to take Herculean effort on the part of all of us to convince businesses not to disappear, to come back.
A Herculean effort, you say? I have to agree. What is the mayor's solution? I know what I would do, but she's the mayor. Let's hear her out.
And we're prepared to fight that fight. But as Alderman Charlie Farrow said, we have got to get, and I've been on calls all day with members of the faith community, community-based organizations, business community, asking people to step up and use their voices in their network and distinguish between righteous First Amendment protests and what we're seeing all over our city, which is just criminal conduct. We need to uplift those voices at this time in our city.
Well, you heard the mayor. We need to uplift those voices and make sure that they make a distinction between protests and riots. That'll help. Look, I'll tell you how to do it. It's very simple. Do your job. Enforce the law. Ensure that your town is not overrun by arsonists, thugs, and barbarians. Stop being an easy target, and the agitators will move on, but they feel like they can get away with it. So remove the threat of force from your town, and then stay the hell out of the way. There are still people that need things, so someone will come along and meet those needs. Allow them to do so without restriction. But first, they need to see that you can handle yourself, that you can enforce laws and prevent things from being stolen. Next clip.
We stopped CTA services as of 10 minutes ago until sometime in the morning. We'll give a final notification at 5 a.m. to let people know. But what we were seeing is people were commandeering buses. They were using the trains that were operational to travel from neighborhood to neighborhood. And it just became, the CTA became a tool for the looters and for the anarchists. But these are organized efforts, some of them. We're just seeing it in too many places for it to be random.
After this, I cut out another bit. An alderman claims that she called 911 many times and only got through once after waiting 5 minutes. Another alderman confirms the same, and this increases the response time of the police.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Mayor Lightfoot, and thank you, Commissioner. I just want to tell you guys, my ward is a shit show. It's cop cars burning, banks burning. We had to put the bridges up. I'm the only ward that borders another state. It's Indiana, and the mayor's right. The police can't keep up, and I know Michelle and Greg can attest. 4th District is huge, and our police can't do it. They're shooting at the police. I have videos right across the street from my office of people shooting. Sorry, I've never seen the likes of this, nor did I. And I want to tell you, this kicked off in my ward this morning at about 11 o'clock. It wasn't a protest. It wasn't anything like that. It was about 40 people that showed up in the dispensary lot. And a dispensary, most of you guys know, it's like Fort Knox getting in there. There was people trapped inside. They were trying to break down the front door, and they were calling the police. Police couldn't get there fast enough. The employees had to escape out the back door, and they got in. They got through 4 doors, bulletproof glass. They cleaned the place out, and then they just went from 85th and Commercial all the way down to almost 91st Street. And now they're by my office on 106th. They're in Hegwish. We had to close the roads coming from Indiana into Illinois. The mayor at Hammond closed those. I've never seen anything like it. I'm scared. This is broad daylight. I don't know what night is going to bring. My question is, what are we going to do for tomorrow? Sorry.
Listen, Sue, it's I can't tell you how many times I've cried today. Broken down.
I'm sorry.
Terrifying.
Some of these businesses are brand new. Sorry. I just, my whole thing is I just want to make sure nobody gets hurt. And I mean, there's business owners now. I know I talked to a lot of you guys. There's business owners that are sitting there with fucking shotguns in their hand because they're scared somebody's gonna come. I put out an email. I called. Staff's been working all day. Telling businesses close down, go home. Please don't stay open. They're shooting. They're shooting like it's a fucking wild, South. It's crazy. I got videos of. I have over 10 videos of people shooting at other people. Like it's insane. Like broad daylight, they're just shooting.
I left this in there in its entirety because I think it's important to really drive home the full reality of the situation on the ground.
I can't explain it. I can't explain the psychology of people being so reckless and ruthless and engaging in such blatant criminal behavior in broad daylight.
Really, Mayor? You can't? I mean, you don't seem like an idiot. I'll try. When people have been told to stay in their homes for months and they feel like they've been lied to, they're treated as ill until proven healthy, then one of our servants who are meant to keep us safe gets plastered on wall-to-wall coverage kneeling on a man's neck as he cries for mama, then those same servants are unable or unwilling to protect our property. Maybe, just maybe, these people feel like they need to make themselves heard. To be clear, I do not condone any wanton destruction of another person's property. I'm attempting to elucidate our good mayor on the psychological component at play here.
And people are just fucking lawless right now.
Yeah.
We've just got to keep preaching calm and people's goodwill to stay home.
I think it's really important that we all are on the same message, right? We all have to keep saying the same message. So,
But we're not on the same message. I'm sorry, we're not on the same message. My colleagues, some of my colleagues are preaching that this is something of a genuine insurrection, and it isn't. This is about the city. The lifeblood of the city is just it's being taken off, and it's not right. And if you're an elected official, and if you're saying that just cannot be right, and we have to call that out.
Okay, we'll go to Alderman.
I think it's pretty clear why I left this one in. The speaker is a coward. We have to call that out as he calls out no one. Big round of applause for that guy. What he means to say is that some elected officials are cheering on this destruction like the despotic nihilists they are. They're encouraging people to loot and riot, not in as many words, but with moral support. And, like a bunch of cowards also, the whole group just moves right along, and no one addresses this point. The next bit is a little long, but hang in there. It's worth it.
You know, before we started this, we're having a conversation about what's going on in our neighborhoods, and it's heart-wrenching, gut-wrenching. But this is what I was trying to get at this morning, is that when downtown is in lockdown, our neighborhoods are next. And our failure to fully get ready for what's going on in the neighborhoods, we're seeing this destruction, and we're thinking that it's going to somehow end tonight. We have seen where in other cities this has gone on for days. And we need to come up with a better plan for days, at least for the next 5 days, to try and stabilize our communities. Right now, Mayor, back in the yards in Brighton Park, from Halsted almost all the way through to Kedzie, along 47th Street, has been a virtual war zone. Ashland Avenue, which borders between me and Alderman Taylor, has had 400 people and 4 lanes of traffic almost for an hour. And we can't expect our police, and I don't fault them at all, to be able to control this. But I know that we asked our faith base yesterday to stand as the front line between police and looters and rioters. And I am simply not comfortable telling my churches, those people, to be the intermediary in the middle of a riot that's citywide. We need something better, because right now we only have 370 whatever National Guards on standby. Half our neighborhoods are already obliterated. It's too late. We have to come up with a better plan, because my fear is once they're done looting and rioting and whatever's going to happen tonight, God help us, What happens when they start going after residents, going into the neighborhoods? Once they start trying to break down people's doors who they think they got something, or we know that people are here to antagonize and incite, and you've got them all pumped today. They're not going to go to bed at 8 o'clock. They're going to turn their focus in the neighborhoods. I've got gangbangers with AK-47s walking around right now, just waiting to settle some scores. What are we going to do, and what do we tell our residents other than good faith people stand up? It's not going to be enough.
Thank you, Alderman. Next question.
Well, no, I want an answer. You commented on everybody. I want an answer. It's not something you ignore. This is a question that I have.
I think you're 100% full of shit, is what I think. If you think
no offense, well, fuck you then.
Hold on.
Who are you to tell me I'm full of shit?
And if you think we were not ready and we stood by and let the neighborhood go up, there's nothing intelligent that I can say to you.
Well, maybe you should come out and see what's going on.
One of the stupidest things I have ever heard. I understand you want to preen. I understand that you think that you.
Mayor, you need to check your fucking attitude. That's what you need to do. Because right now, no, you need to check your attitude. Wait a minute. I'm being disrespectful. She just told me I'm full of shit. No, you're not. You cannot tell me I'm full of shit.
Everybody, come on, let's calm down.
Come on now. Let's calm down.
That's it. Wait a minute. Okay. Wait a minute.
Ray, cut it out, please. Calm down, Ray. We're all heated. Come on, guys.
Wait a minute. My neighborhood.
More intelligent than that. Please calm down.
Let's go ahead. All right. Thank you.
I think right now we need solutions. So people need solutions. Let's step up, right?
Yeah.
All hands on deck right now.
Right.
Bullshit.
The guy recording is the guy speaking, judging by the quality, and presumably the one who published this recording. Now, I don't care what his motives were, because the point is that he had motives. Maybe he wanted to preen, as suggested. Maybe he wanted to expose the mayor as useless. The point is this. I stood on my soapbox and banged on the table a bit about this a few podcasts ago. The reason I put you through that just now is to underscore the point that these people are not special. They do not have some special skill or some special knowledge that makes them uniquely fit for this job or for this crisis. They are just people like you and me. They chose a career that you did not. I say this not to humanize our public servants, but to caution you against any power we give them. What gives them the right or the ability to say what you may or may not do with your business, whether you may or may not build a shack in your yard, to restrict the size of sodas you can buy? Nothing gives them any right to do any of those things. They are elected to help protect our individual rights, and they can't even do that properly. Moving on past all of the let's calm down talk.
Next question.
I think that was me. So I appreciate it. I think we just all need to respect one another here. We're all working on solving the city's problems. We are the leaders of the city, so let's work on that, please.
And if you have been listening to me for a while, you know why I chose this clip. I call this out whenever I can. Elected officials are not leaders. They are our servants, and it would do us well to remember that. And if you do consider yourself leaders, just a bang-up job, really. Brava.
All of us have had our communities, our stores. I had my city sports store at 47th in Halsted being looted. I was out there across the street from that was the Walgreens. So we've all seen that. I guess, as terrible as that is, those are just items. Those are, we can restock the shelves. The concern now is for human life. And as the social media is pushing for, and the Antifa and these anarchists that are out there, that are using everything. They're using Black Lives Matter. They're using other groups to pit one another against each other. We've got to come together. But my concern is with the now focus on going into the neighborhoods, in all of our neighborhoods. Mayor, I don't know where the police are in terms of intel with what we can verify, if they're able to verify that, and can we please get that information readily? I know the police are outnumbered. We can't go and protect every property. I get that. I think Walgreens and City Sports and those shopping centers need to step up as well with their security and to be out there. But at the end of the day, those are just items. I'm talking about the human life now.
Many smarter and more eloquent than I have made this point before me, but this really gets my goat. To say that human life is more valuable than an Xbox is one thing. To say they are just items or just property is another. Property is an extension of one's life. Man must produce in order to live. Production is reason applied to the problem of survival. Each and every item looted or smashed represents some amount of time and effort from some producer. Pointing out that lives take priority over property again and again and again and again and again makes it clear that you are either virtue signaling or that you don't care about property. If the latter, why would you be concerned with CVS and Walmart coming back? Those are just things, after all. And fuck you with your stores need to protect themselves. No, they fucking don't. Their security is for minor loss prevention, not bulldozing riots. That's your job, numbnuts. The mayor goes on to say that the arson they have seen and much of the antagonism has been identified by the ATF and the FBI as outside parties and falls short of mentioning Antifa.
Guys, I know you've already probably heard it because I've been listening to it as well. There's a lot of folks that have police scanners that have the capability of allowing them to broadcast over the police radio. So there's been a lot of music played. There's been a lot of false, whether you call it false calls or not, but there's a lot of broadcasts that is non-police that are going over police radio that's actually causing police to go to different locations. So if you do hear rumors like that, a lot of it is being broadcast falsely over the radio by those that have devices in their hand that can broadcast over police radio. So be careful on what you hear, and it's best to call and verify this.
No, that's a very good point. Some of our frequencies are encrypted, and unfortunately some of them are not. We're working to solve that problem, but that's a longer-term fix.
This is just an interesting observation. That's really all. Sounds like the police need more funding so that they can upgrade to encrypted radio.
When you see women out there, young girls, they're doing it just as worse. And that's heartbreaking. And these are not like gangbanger girls.
Hey, whoa. What's with the sexism? Women can riot just as well as men, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise.
I think one concern and question I have, I know, Mayor, you stated earlier about the presence of the Guard in communities. At what point might you feel that may be necessary, that we do bring them in? Because think through that or think about that being a potential necessity.
Listen to the hedging, the couching, the unsure nature of the question and the deference given. Does this sound like a leader to you? I think that maybe you could possibly consider as a potential the idea that we might do something like that. After unpacking that multi-layer wrapped gift of obsequiousness, maybe you could peek down your shorts and see if you can find a pair.
You know, when the kingdom can't, when the army can't help the kingdom, then people feel like they can take over your kingdom. We need to put it in a position where folks feel afraid of dealing with us.
First of all, what? Did you not write down what you wanted to say? I'm not even sure what he meant by that. You had all this time. But I sure got the last point. He wants the citizens to be afraid. This reminded me of Galt's speech from Atlas Shrugged. Quote, "You seek escape from pain. We seek the achievement of happiness. You exist for the sake of avoiding punishment. We exist for the sake of earning rewards. Threats will not make us function. Fear is not our incentive. It is not death that we wish to avoid, but life that we wish to live. You, who have lost the concept of the difference, you who claim that fear and joy are incentives of equal power, and secretly add that fear is the more practical. You do not wish to live, and only fear of death still holds you to the existence that you have damned." Unquote.
But you're right. I mean, we had police in riot gear, full riot gear, out on the west side earlier today, and the crowds that were there didn't give a shit. We pepper sprayed them twice, and they were fighting. It took about 3 hours to clear that location and hold it.
But we don't want them to think after this is over that they can beat the police.
100%.
Okay.
100%.
Huh. It's almost like fear doesn't work well when people believe that they are right. The resolution, of course, is to convince them otherwise if possible, and to use force as necessary to protect lives and property. It is also the case that you must believe that you are right, and I don't believe that they do believe that.
As much as I do love all my colleagues who I border and all 50 of us, but I do have an issue when one of our colleagues is on TV complaining about police, and then lo and behold, while the shot is still live, more police show up, while less than 1,000 feet, they're looting and burning buildings in my ward. So it seemed like they stopped right at the border of one ward, and it's the same damn police district, and it makes us look bad and feeds into the stereotype is they always go to the white neighborhood and they never come to us. And I got a problem with that.
All right. Happy to talk to you offline about that.
Now, I don't know if any of that is true, but the pregnant pause in the mayor suggesting that they take it offline makes me think that she didn't want to be recorded telling a black alderman that he was out of his mind and that the racial preference does not exist, when that's what the whole riot is about in the first place. Actually, a good optics play from the mayor on that one. The alderman then reiterates the same point, basically says the same thing, and the mayor says the same thing, so I cut all that out. And another alderman rambles for about 5 minutes about community togetherness, saving lives, and communication and all that jazz before the mayor drops this one.
We have our differences, but let's do the best we can to communicate, bring resources together, and strategically address this situation to save lives.
Well, I spent a lot of time today managing protesters who showed up at my house following your lead, Alderman.
I did not do that, Mayor, with all respect.
Next question.
Oof. Some infighting in politics? Say it ain't so. The riot is then compared to the 68 riots after the assassination of Dr. King.
There's a few of us that have been cops, and I guess I'm the only one on this call today that actually went through this. I was a young PO in 1968 when the looters burned down the west side. And it was a lot smaller area, and we were overwhelmed then. But this has taken place all throughout the whole city, and I have to agree with what you indicated earlier. This is being controlled someplace. This is far too well organized to think that it's just random.
In the 1968 riots, for more than 48 hours of rioting, left, 11 Chicago citizens dead, 48 wounded by police gunfire, 90 policemen injured, and 2,150 people arrested. What in the world is this series of riots going to bring?
Private citizens are going to become vigilantes. They're going to protect themselves because the police aren't reachable. There's not enough men or women to respond when the call is made, but the call doesn't get answered. I don't have all the answers, but this is far worse than it was in 1968 when I was out there on the west side.
Now, this should never happen, but you could not, in your wildest dreams, come up with a better advertisement for the Second Amendment. When the police cannot or will not do their jobs, it's up to you to defend yourself.
But you know, Mayor, they're so overworked. They're rushing from this crisis to that crisis. Out here in 8, there was a huge problem at the Ford City Mall. They're looting these stores up and down Pulaski with immunity. There just are not enough police. And then when the police do come, all they do is disperse the looters because they don't have the ability to take anybody into custody. And he told me the last time I called him about this issue over here was that the cars of people are riding by them, giving them the finger and hooting at them. And as you well know, we all do, that law enforcement is based on respect of the people to obey the law without having to be arrested or charged. And once that respect goes, our system of law enforcement in America is going to dissolve.
I could not agree more with this statement. The resolution, however, is not to beat the citizens into submission or make examples out of some of them, but to make the laws worthy of respect. The rest of the call is mostly meaningless platitudes, blatherings, and self-fellatio, so we'll end it there. These are the calls that usually take place behind closed doors and presently are deciding your fate. What I take away from this is that our elected servants are not doing their jobs. Speaking of which, we need to talk about the CHAZ. Now, I've already taken too much of your valuable time, so I'll be covering this next week after they've collapsed like a dying star. If you're not familiar, I don't know what to tell you. The basics are that a mob has taken over a roughly 6-block area of Seattle and declared that it is no longer part of the United States and has declared that they are the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone. I have to admit that I was instantly fascinated by this. What are the dynamics between this tiny country and our own? Are they seceding? If so, how do we treat them? Are there limits to the force that the greatest military in the world could use on this 6-block micronation? I don't understand how anyone couldn't be interested. Like I said, I'll cover in more detail next week, but the one thing that instantly made me happy was that this cop-free zone took under 48 hours to get its first warlord, a motherfucking SoundCloud rapper by the name of CHAZ, may he reign for 1,000 years, used his golden tongue to gather enough groupies to form a posse and declared themselves the local constabulary. They even went as far as beating a man for spray painting, so on the one hand, I think it's hilarious that the people who are demanding the police be disbanded because of brutality make their own commune where the self-appointed policeman's first act is to beat the hell out of a guy. On the other hand, I'm over the moon about it taking less than 2 days to prove Ayn Rand right about anarchy. Quote, "Anarchy, as a political concept, is a naive floating abstraction. A society without an organized government would be at the mercy of the first criminal who came along, and who would precipitate it into the chaos of gang warfare. But the possibility of human immorality is not the only objection to anarchy. Even a society whose every member were fully rational and faultlessly moral could not function in a state of anarchy. It is the need of objective law and an arbiter for honest disagreements among men that necessitates the establishment of a government," unquote. And trust me, these people all think alike. They all think that they're the righteous ones. As a matter of fact, they have a list of demands. Well, it depends on who you talk to, or which of their websites you read, or which graffiti you deem authentic, but here's portions of some lists that I found. The degentrification of Seattle through the use of rent control. We all know that'll work. The abolition of the Seattle Police Department and courts. Federal investigation into police brutality. It's not so bad. Hospitals are to hire black nurses and doctors to specifically aid black patients. They did it. They solved racism. The answer is segregation. Separate but equal. Woo! Fund community health. Details not provided. And drop charges against protesters. While these demands are obviously hilarious on their face, I'd like to point something else out. These are your demands, but what do you hold? Generally, when someone makes demands, they're holding something the other person wants, right? So, like, if you're holding someone hostage, you might ask for a getaway car. Or if you're robbing a bank, you might demand a stack of pizzas for the release of the bank teller. You see, there's a give and a take. But you just declared yourself no longer part of the U.S. This is like Canada demanding that we make maple syrup the national waffle topping. There are basically two responses these dingleberries should expect. You'll either get ignored or shit yourself when you see the tanks on the horizon. That would be an irrational society, though. Here, I'm sure that their wimp of a mayor will capitulate eventually, and she'll regain control of shit-smeared streets, broken infrastructure, and a bunch of smelly hippies for her trouble. And they'll all laugh it off as a success for free speech and proof that we can all stand up to racism. We'll all forget about how homeless people stole all their food on the second night. We'll forget about the warlord rapper. We'll forget about how they couldn't feed themselves because none of these liberal arts majors knew how to plant a garden. How they relied on infrastructure built by greedy capitalists to live stream their faux insurrection. How they couldn't plan hours in advance, let alone years. How indeed all forms of socialism are doomed to failure. How anarchies crumble instantly. Or any of these lessons that are so simple that a child could understand. But a child has not been through our colleges. These people have. Draw the conclusions that you will from that. Ooh, crazy times we're living in. Kind of cool to be part of history, and for me, documenting some of it, but it can be extremely stressful. If you care to take my advice, enjoy a sunset. Just take a moment to enjoy something simple. It could be anything. The feel of air conditioning on the back of your neck, the smell of the ground after a soft rain, the way your partner laughs, or a piece of music that moves you deeply. Take time to enjoy something sensory. It's direct, and it ties you to this world. I know I have a tendency to get in my own head and stay there, but there's a whole world of wonderful things to experience. Enjoy. Got a topic or feedback? The podcast is at Americanitis Tech. You can also follow me at Dan Sagner. My last name is spelled Sierra Alpha Golf November Echo Romeo. Please subscribe via Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts if podcasts are your thing. I'm also on YouTube, so remember to annihilate that subscribe button. Patronize us at patreon.com/techside. Show notes are techside.net/Americanitis. Theme music by Eddie. I thank you all for listening. Later days.